Now, from the studios of 106.7 My Talker Radio, the man, the legend, the one who just drives you crazy, Curtis Wright, on the beat.
We're back live on the new 106.7 FM My Talker Radio. It's 8:05, sun's up across southeastern North Carolina. Get up, get something hot. We have lots more to talk about. Coming up at 8:30 this morning, John Barnes will be joining us from Concerned Veterans for America. We're going to talk about the Defend Freedom Tour. It's coming this Friday to Wilmington at Battleship Park. It's going to be exciting, lots of music, lots of fun, lots of food, and a great way to gather and support our veterans across southeastern North Carolina. Here in North Carolina, of course, the home of the American soldier. So, folks, stay tuned for that. We'll talk about that. You're hearing the promos that are running on the station. Recently, and not unlike many stories, sadly, in America, where the general public is detached and I don't want to talk about apathy. I want to talk about just not interested in paying attention to what goes on in America. We saw in a recent story by an actor out of Hollywood, and it touched a lot of people's hearts. You saw a lot of things on the internet, Facebook page, about how this particular father was being alienated from his child. But as I said, sadly, this is far too much the situation in America, where citizens have no clue as to really what is going on in their communities and across their states and across the country. Parental alienation has been going on for years, and it has been going on because it is encouraged, it is supported by a judicial system that does not support the best interest of the child, does not protect the rights of a child to have complete and equal access to not only their parents, but other members of their families. It is more about a check or a bed or place to sleep. And that is sad. Because, again, the rights of children and children are being abused every day by our court systems across America. And you are listening, as you well know, for the years you've listened to me on the air, you are listening to a talk show host that had to live through the nightmare of a judicial system that abused my children and abused me as a father. I'm a survivor. Sadly, there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of parents who are not survivors and grandparents who aren't survivors. I am honored to have with us today that he's taking time. He's traveling across America. He's the founder of April25.org, April25.org. Joe Barrow is with us. And like, sadly, too many stories, it is about, again, how court systems and the judicial system abuses our children and their rights to equal access to parents and grandparents and extended family members. Good morning, Joe, and thanks for taking the time to be with us.
Good morning, Curtis, and thank you for having me on your show. I appreciate that.
Talk to us about the founding of April25.org. If you want to share your personal story that, you know, I'm sure something that you didn't want to happen in your life but brought you into this situation.
Yeah, well, exactly. This is never in my life would I have imagined that I would be sitting here on a cross-country tour trying to bring awareness to parental alienation, something that I hadn't even heard of about 3 years ago when I first started, 4 years ago now when this first started happening. April 25 is, as you know, National Parental Alienation Awareness Day. So I thought that would be a befitting name for our organization, and how it started was I'm a healthy, fit, loving father, and who has a now 15-year-old daughter that's been alienated from not just me, but from my current wife, whom she had an extraordinary relationship with, and also her three little sisters, who are 11, 9, and 6, who were a major part of her life. We haven't seen our daughter, or my daughter, in about a little over a year. Neither have they. When And so we just thought, in order to raise awareness, we would go on another cross-country awareness road trip. This is something that's endemic, as you mentioned, across our nation, and which very few people know about. And even those that have an idea that it's happening do not know to what extent how prevalent it is in our society.
And of course, this has grown into a crisis because, sadly, the situation of America, where we just are dealing with so much divorce and separation, and now there's all kinds of other situations we saw with even people who are single that find themselves becoming parents, and then they have a relationship, and then one of the two people decide, well, no longer are you going to be allowed to have that relationship, and as I said, the court system's coming in behind. In my experience, I feel so fortunate that it was short-lived, if you will. The abuse of my children, the abuse of myself. One day you are a father held up as, someone who, because you're involved with your children, you're a good father, and the next minute you find yourself and you're basically the enemy of the state because of the judicial system. You know as well as I do, Joe, that judges in their robes love to pontificate God on earth, they seem to think of themselves, but they forget to, and they don't put really much attention to the law that says the best interest of the child are supposed to be the polar star that guides every decision. Well, if that's true, then it should be equal access by both parents to their children at all times, because that's in the best interest of the child. The rest of it is clerical work, in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely correct. And unfortunately, you've spoken like somebody who's experienced it. What I've found is that yes, we're absolutely in a crisis, and I think it's beyond that. This is an American tragedy that families are being torn apart, and that is being encouraged. And in some cases facilitated by our judicial system. You're right on many accounts that the judges, lawyers, guardian ad litem, the mediators, they fail to put the child first. It's in a lot of cases, and not most. It's more about making money and making sure these court vendors line their pockets rather than doing what's in the best interest of the child. It's common sense that a child will fare a lot better off with both parents in their lives. But unfortunately, as you know, this is not the case. The interesting thing that comes to mind and it always comes up is how you have to completely experience this to realize how tragic and how prevalent and fully understand what we're going through. And I can tell when somebody understands exactly what's going on when they use the words, such as what you used earlier, that this is a nightmare.
It is, and Joe, it's as well as I do. This is, I have said this. We shouldn't have to have laws in America. I mean, if the government is going to insert themselves into this area of our society, which they have, because they feel they need to protect the child, then it starts with the child. It ends with the child. It should be all about the child. And if a parent does not respect a 50-50 custody and access order, then they in fact should be brought into court, and they should be made to explain, why are you abusing this child of yours? Because that's how I feel about it. Because a child, you said, well, you said something about common sense. How about statistics? We've had statistics now for 40 years showing us the tremendous damage done to these children when they are denied equal access to both parents. It's unbelievable, actually, that we allow it. It's child abuse.
It is. It's extremely abusive. And I one day we will look back on this, Curtis, on this time in disbelief that we actually that we actually did this, that we treated our children in such a way. And unfortunately, that's what we're trying to work towards, by bringing awareness.
Now, Joe, I'm going to put you on hold, and you just stay right there. We've got a little bit more to talk about. I want to talk about more about what you're doing in your cross-country tour and how people can get involved in this issue, because I think it's so important for our children. It's so important for all children that we keep this issue in the forefront in our society. I'm Curtis Wright. We'll be right back here on The Beat.
Curtis Wright on The Beat.
Can you think of anything more American?
This is the new 106.7 My Talker.
We're back live here on The Beat. I'm Curtis Wright, and we're honored to have with us Joe Barrow. Joe is a father who is alienated from his children, and let's make clear here this morning, we're talking about parental alienation, and parental alienation goes beyond the parents. It's families, entire sides, as he says, of families being denied access to children, and children too, I like to flip that around, children being denied access to their full members of their families by one vindictive ex-partner who's, just, is allowed, is encouraged, is supported too often by a judicial system that allows this. And again, Joe, for someone who's been through it and it's survived, and luckily my nightmare was short-lived, it's funny. It's not funny. In this country, it's sad that we as a community and as a nation and a society, we have this so-called zero tolerance for child abuse. Yet this goes on every day, this child abuse for millions and millions and millions of children. And as you say in here, and you mentioned before the break, if you look at the research and the damage, permanent damage that is done to these children later in life, and as they, I should say, grow up and then later in life, it is clear child abuse. And it should not be tolerated whatsoever by a family court system that far too often is complicit in allowing this all to happen.
Absolutely, and they're more than just complicit. It seems to be encouraged, again, because it's a money-making machine. And you're right, it's an American tragedy. The fact that the judicial system and their officers fall back on the creed that they're doing what they're doing in the best interest of children. When I hear that phrase, it makes me cringe. It is a joke that it's not very funny. With the fact that they spew that out as if it's the truth is ironic, because they work. Everything that the court system does seems to be against what's in the best interest of children. As you said, it's their long-lasting detrimental effects to cutting out a loving, fit parent from a child's life. And then, with that said, it's not just a loving, fit parent. It's actually one entire side of the family that gets alienated.
Mm-hmm. Joe, I have to tell you, here in southeastern North Carolina, I don't know if it's gotten any better. For a while, I had a number of organizations that would call me on the air and talk about it, and other groups, especially when I talked about on the air, fathers would call me. I don't know if that's changed here in southeastern North Carolina. And for all the platitudes and for all the show and smoke and mirrors by judges who run for office, again, when you find out, especially our female judges here in southeastern North Carolina, it is, if you're a father that comes into court and you want to fight to maintain that equal access and keep that relationship going equally, my gosh, overnight you become enemy number one. Enemy number one. Because they don't want to deal with a parent that says, no, I'm going to equally stay involved. And they don't say to the other parent, well, guess what? We're starting at 50-50 right now, and you better have a good excuse why it should be 51-49. But they don't do that. They don't do that.
No, absolutely. For fathers in particular, in a lot of cases, it's an uphill battle. As soon as you walk in, like you said, you're fighting. It's an uphill, it's an uphill monstrosity that you're fighting against. It's a wonder that it's no wonder why some, not just fathers, because it also happens to mothers, but how some parents would are so overwhelmed that they would just throw their hands up because they don't have a recourse. You would think that as a final recourse, they go into court to try to be a part of their child's life. Usually, if court order is already being violated by the other parent, and nothing gets done, you really have nowhere to turn. And that's why what we're doing is we feel at least we're doing something by trying to raise awareness and let other people know that this is endemic. It's happening across the nation. It's unbelievable that in this country, in this day and age, this happens to families by our judicial system. And again, we're hoping to, in raising awareness, that people will start to maybe take a closer look and realize that this is how detrimental this is and how pervasive it is in our society. And this has a direct correlation to the number of the amount of crime, the amount of juvenile delinquency,
drug abuse. I mean, drug abuse, kids who drop out of school. It's unbelievable, the numbers.
Yeah, it's unbelievable that this is happening. In our today's day and age, I feel that we are making progress. There are several states where there's enough going on and that have actually changed some laws, and it's done by creating awareness and contacting your legislature and being vocal. I think being vocal and talking about what not just fathers are going through, but mothers and grandparents and within our court system and how they're being denied access to their children and grandchildren is very crucial to getting something done about this.
And it's a complete, like I've said this, I don't mean to be repetitive. It's a complete different mindset that needs to take place. And any judge who doesn't get it should be immediately removed from family court or from the bench. And sadly, I've had people come up to me and talk about judges and go, well, he's a wonderful father. And my response is, a wonderful father would never allow this to happen to other children. Oh, she's a wonderful mother, and she's a woman as well, and she's a judge. And I said, well, no mother would allow this to happen to children. So, this is all a bunch of smoke and mirrors. You're right. Sadly, there's far too much money to be made by having this adversarial, detrimental, damaging environment that the lawyers and judges create. There's far too much money being made, and that's sad to think about that. It's sad that I even have to say that, and you've said it as well. But
you make a good point when you mention that the parent who is in the courtroom trying to deny the other parent equal access to their child is the one that should be looked at, not the parent that's attempting to get more time with their child.
Yes.
A lot of what happens in our court system seems to be, it goes against common sense. It goes against anything that's right. It goes against the research that's been done, and that child needs both parents. The parent who is fighting tooth and nail to be in a child's life, that should tell you something, that they're trying that hard, that they're spending the
should
time
encourage
and the money.
it, right? I mean, should encourage it. Joe, how many times have you heard a father or a mother that wants to be equally involved in the PTA after a separation, or they want to be equally at all the concerts, or they want to be equally at the ballet performances, or take them to their ballet and keep that routine that they've had during the week? And judges who, they're so intelligent, they're so much more intelligent, they're people of character and integrity. Well, then why are you destroying that? That's something we need to encourage, not just in these type of situations, but throughout our society, right?
Exactly, absolutely. I think you make a lot of good points when it comes to our judicial system and how the judges. You would think that's how judges think and work. We've come to find out, as myself before this started happening, I had an idea that as a last resort, of course, you go to a court system and you let a wise knowledgeable judge that's familiar with family dynamics help you and resolve your a custody case. And that's not at all how it works. Come to find, and instead you're thrust into this. It's like a twilight zone. It's like living inside a twilight zone where nothing is as it should be.
Joe, I've got to put you on hold. I've got a hard break, and I appreciate your being with us. Folks, you need to go to april25.org, april25.org. You can get involved in this issue. There's a lot that can be done, more that can be done, not only across the country, but specifically here in North Carolina. And, Joe, if I may, just one last comment. It's far too much about who writes the check and who's supplying a pillow than about, it should be, the polar star that guides these intelligent, caring judges should be, in fact, what's best for the child. And what's best for the child is both parents equally, and their grandparents, and the rest of their family members. Joe, I've got to go to a break. I hope we'll come back and continue this discussion in the future. Folks, stay with us. When we get back, we're going to talk about the Defend Freedom Tour that's coming up this Friday right here in Wilmington, North Carolina.